Joining me on the program right now is Representative Ben Cline from Virginia's 6th Congressional District. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so are we looking at CRs for the foreseeable future? I mean, we've got money going out, people coming in. We don't have a budget. Is it going to be continuing resolutions going forward?
It's very frustrating because the swamp is on autopilot, and whether it's the Senate or the White House, they want to continue spending Nancy Pelosi spending levels from last year. We put in Speaker Mike Johnson to try and stop this autopilot. He's coming under enormous pressure, and I'm optimistic that conservatives are going to stand together against this continued excess deficit spending that's driving our country into ruin.
How do you deal with people? Nobody wants Vladimir Putin to win. But if you question the amount of spending or demand accountability or say, you know, maybe the United States shouldn't be paying the salaries of all these government officials in Ukraine, they wag their finger in your face and tell you that you're with Putin.
And even when you want to say, well, let's look at our own border instead of a border halfway around the world in Ukraine, they say that you're somehow with Putin, and that's just irresponsible. We recognize that our constituents, that Americans want to make sure that we secure our own border. And so we want to make sure that is first and foremost on our agenda when we're dealing with the president, when we're dealing with the Senate, and when they come to us with questions about continued funding for the bureaucratic state, continued funding for Ukraine, continued funding for all of these woke programs that they're in the Pentagon and in other places. We say, wait a minute, let's talk about the border first.
You know, just a little history here. The Democrats weren't always anti-Putin. Now, that became a thing they invented when Trump started running. I mean, they trusted Putin with chemical and biological weapons in Syria, right? There was the Russian reset, the button with Hillary Clinton. There was the hot mic moment with Barack Obama say, take this back to Vlad. They didn't seem to mind when a Russian state company was going to purchase U.S. uranium. So when did this thing that if you're not for these massive spending programs and protracted wars, you're now with Putin? Actually, it seemed like the Democrats themselves were with Putin.
Yeah, the Democrats are really only interested in getting more taxpayer dollars for more of their initiatives. And when their buddy over in Ukraine needs help, they want to get that money. And so casting aspersions on those who would actually question about accountability for those taxpayer dollars, who are standing up for taxpayers, you know, that's the Democrats' MO. So we're going to continue to demand that accountability. We're going to continue to ask where the $100 billion that we've already spent in Ukraine has gone. And we're going to demand that a plan be put in place for how this conflict is going to be resolved before we spend an additional dollar of taxpayer money in Ukraine.
Shouldn't Congress demand? I mean, look, I mean, Congress has the power to declare war, right? But we're not at war, and no NATO nation is at war. How does this end? Shouldn't we be asking, how does this end? Is it 100 billion, 200 billion, 300 billion? You know, if it looks like this is going to be a $500 billion price tag to the United States, we kind of have to ask ourselves, is it worth it?
You know, it was very illuminating when we had a debate on this very question. Warren Davidson put forward an amendment to the defense authorization bill saying that Congress asks the administration for a plan for Ukraine. And it was voted down by the Democrats because they and the pro-Ukraine Republicans who did not want something put on paper that actually puts forward a plan. What is victory? What do we constitute victory as being? And how long will it take? How much will it cost? These are questions that the American people deserve to have answered before another dollar of their tax dollars gets spent over in Ukraine for a non-NATO country. And for a never-ending conflict at this point.
We need a real budget. We can't be spending $100 billion on every other country while we're taking in millions of people and spending $500 billion on them here in the United States. The idea that the president is going to tell Congress what the budget's going to look like, maybe he ought to pick up the Constitution and read Article 1. All bills for raising revenue originate in the House of Representatives, not the Senate, not the courts, not the White House. So it seems like House Republicans really need to get greater control over this. And I know you agree, and I know it's a thin majority and all that, and Mike Johnson's pretty new at the job. But if the House Republicans don't get control of this, the Democrats will continue to spend us into oblivion. I got to leave it there, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.